Welcome to Steel Watching, which is a podcast for Remington Steel fans. My name is Sarah, and I'm wondering if Mother Nature is drunk.
Why do you say that?
Oh, our weather is wonky. Like one day it's snow, the next day it's 10 degrees, the next day it's rain. I don't
Sounds like
think
Colorado.
it feels like Mother Nature is spinning a wheel, and whatever it lands on, that's the day's weather. It's just very strange.
Yeah, it sounds like Colorado. My daughter and son-in-law and their kids lived in Colorado for a number of years, and that was pretty much their weather, especially in the winter. Yeah. Anyway, I'm Eric. Hey, get the business out of the way.
Yeah. And well, speaking of that, before we get into the episode, there's just a couple of things that I think we wanted to talk about. One of which is a review that we got. So yay, reviews. We like reviews. And I just have it here, so I'm just going to read it. This person said, I was a young teenager when the show originally aired, fell in love with Pierce, and I wanted to grow up and be Laura. Thanks for the podcast while I'm doing a rewatch. The one thing I think is missing from the podcast are anecdotes from the actors and or directors on each episode. Just a suggestion. So thank you so much for the review, because we love getting them. And in terms of the other element of that, we sort of made a decision early on that this was going to be a podcast that was just going to focus on the show. We didn't want to get into too heavily with regards to the actors or stuff that happened behind the scenes or rumors that were going around when the show was on, just because I think it clouds up some of the content. And sometimes you won't be able to avoid it, like today's episode. Where, the Cassandra Harris is in it, and obviously that's a notable thing because she was married to Pierce at the time, but beyond that, we try to sort of stick to the sort of death of the author concept, which is that
I've heard of that.
It's an English teacher thing, but we try to sort of, when we're looking at a text, imagine that we're not like trying to interpret what the author meant. Essentially, we're trying to just look at the text and see what it means to us. So, we can't guess what was going through the mind. Sometimes we do speculate about what the writers were doing when they wrote X, Y, or Z episode. But instead of like saying, oh, I wonder what Michael Gleason was thinking with this or whatnot, we tend to try to just stick with what's in front of us.
Right. Well, the thing is, I do agree with the poster that those types of things can be interesting. I enjoy those types of things. I'm a behind the scenes person. And so all of that behind the scenes stuff really interests me. But I will say that, podcasting has changed. It used to be that when you had an independent show like ours, which is, being done on a shoestring as a hobby in our spare time, you had the possibility of getting an actor or a producer, somebody like that from a show if you were doing a rewatch of a current show, because they had no other alternative in terms of podcasts that were dedicated to their show. I mean, you were probably the only one, and they wanted to reach that audience. But things have changed. Most of the shows that do that, if you look at them, they have money behind them. That's actually their job. Some of them are being sponsored by the studio. Some of them are being sponsored by podcast networks. Others are part of a marketing project for something. And also, everybody who's doing those now have contacts in the industry. We don't.
No.
So we don't have any way, it would be literally a full-time job for us to try to get a hold of somebody, even just somebody who, I pulled the props out of the box and set them on the desk. That guy, that would be a full-time job trying to get a hold of him. So we don't have that kind of time. But no, I like I said, I do agree with the poster that sort of thing is interesting, but that's just not a fit for our show.
It is interesting, and I think that's why we enjoy things like DVD commentaries, because you watch those and you get basically straight from the horse's mouth what they were thinking when they wrote this episode, or behind the scenes stuff on goofs that didn't go right, or things that got screwed up, or pranks that the cast wrote, things like. Yeah, on a good commentary, you'll get those sorts of things.
So many of them are done after the fact, years after the fact. And so a lot of that information has been forgotten.
Yeah.
There are some that were done at the time because they knew that they were going to be releasing them on disc. So that's, those are really good ones. But
yeah. So, I mean, I do enjoy that kind of thing. It's just, I think these episodes are long enough as they are, so we have to kind of stick to what we've kind of decided to focus on. But we really do appreciate the review and the fact that people are listening, and we just surpassed 10,000 downloads. I got an email the other day, so that was really cool. And I think you told me that we have a new subscriber. So
yes, we do, and thank you, subscribers, supporters, everybody that. Even just people that are just listening and responding in the Facebook group, Steel Watchers, Steel Watchers Facebook group. It's great, but we especially appreciate those who have seen fit to make monetary contributions because, it helps cover our costs, which we're nowhere near close to doing. But anyway,
but it's nice. It's so nice that people are actually contributing because they enjoyed it. So.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, thank you very much for the review. I love reading any and all reviews, even the ones that are 1 star, and we get something out of all of it. So
yes,
awesome.
Yes.
So I think we're good to go into the episode.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, cool. So so we're going to be talking about Episode 19, Woman of Steel, and this episode first aired March 27th, 1984. And this one is credited as being written by Susan Baskin, who we know from 2 other episodes already that are pretty notable, Steel Sweet on You, and of course, Vintage, and as well as Richard DeRoy and Michael Gleason, and directed by Christopher Hibbler. So I'm going to guess this is
Teacher.
Yep.
Teacher.
Yep.
Teacher.
What'd I do?
Well, no, you didn't do.
Oh, okay.
No. I think I've commented in the past that I'm starting to have my doubts about IMDb. And
this one I got from Judith's book.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm suspecting that she got some of her information from IMDb, because, if you look under IMDb for this particular episode, it does say Susan Baskin, Richard DeRoy, and Michael Gleason, which is the same information that Judith has in her book. However, when you look up Richard DeRoy's credits as a writer on IMDb, he's not listed on this one. So IMDb has contradictions with itself.
Well, I wonder if, and now I'm checking because the script that we have is called Memory of Steel, and it's credited as Early Woman of Steel. And so I'm wondering if he wrote, I'm just going back up to the top. It doesn't say because it just starts with the script. I'm wondering if he was one of the early writers on the first draft, and then it was heavily rewritten by Susan Baskin and Michael Gleason. That would be my guess.
Yeah, except I would think IMDb would still list him as a writer in this episode when you looked at his credits.
I guess maybe if he was scrubbed from the final product. I don't know. I'm not sure how it...
Except that he's shown in IMDb as a writer on this episode when you look at the episode. So IMDb, I'm starting to have, like I said, questions and doubts about them.
It makes sense. And when you see more than one writer on an episode, it definitely makes you wonder like who's primarily responsible for it, because and we also have another draft of the script that was heavily changed, because I read through Memory of Steel and it's a very different story. So
I didn't even realize that I had that in my collection until this morning, so I did not read through it.
Okay. So. Well, I mean, it's similar to one of the other episodes that we had where the bones of it are the same, but there's definite changes to specifically Anna's character that in some cases I think might have worked a little better and in other cases didn't. And we'll get into some of that when we get there, but I'm wondering if some of the writing credits were because they worked on earlier drafts of the script or later, and then IMDb just screwed up. That's my theory.
IMDb screwed up? No! I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
It's my theory.
AI hallucinations.
So I put down both the TV guide synopsis for this and the DVD liner notes.
Ooh.
And I did that, and I'm looking at why that is. Because I'm trying to remember I'm trying to remember. I clearly did it for a reason. So the TV guide synopsis says when the agency... Oh, I know why. Okay. Because the TV guide synopsis is grammatically weird and doesn't make sense. Because this is what it reads. When the agency guarding an art collection, Steele is distracted by a woman from his past, and Laura intends to learn the woman's intentions regarding the collection and Steele. When the agency guarding an art collection, Steele is distracted. That's what it says. They're missing some words there.
Yeah.
Such as when or it could say, I assume it was supposed to say something like, while the agency is guarding an art collection, Steele is distracted by a woman from his past. That would make more sense, but it does not say that. So I think now I remember I was typing this out and I looked twice and I looked a third time and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Okay, what do the DVD liner notes say? Because other than the missing couple of words here, that's a good description. The DVD liner note says Laura must protect both her partner and a priceless art collection when a beautiful operative from Remington's past re-enters his life. I didn't like the word operative because it makes it sound like she works for for the
agency.
Yeah, exactly. So or
she used
MI5
to work with Lee
or something.
Stetson before.
Yeah, so the TV Guide synopsis would make more sense if it was written properly. So TV Guide, get your act together.
I will fix that in our episode notes.
Okay, so. Good. Because I don't want people to think we made that mistake.
No. We make plenty of mistakes. We don't need to have credit for somebody else's.
Especially since I'm an English teacher. That looks bad on me. Yeah. So, and as I said before, the original title for this episode was Memory of Steele. And in Judith's book, the other sort of note below this says that following the filming of this episode, Pierce Brosnan took the painting of his wife, Cassandra Harris, home with him. This is the second of her guest appearances. So I think it's kind of cool that he kept the painting. And I mean, they would have, and it kind of makes you think about how the fact that they would have had to actually make a painting. Like somebody would have had to paint her portrait for this episode. So that's kind of neat. Like they would have had to employ an artist for that specific purpose. I mean, now you could do it with the AI or something like that, CGI it. Yeah. But no, they actually.
Well, there's other ways to do it as well. For example, the Dick Van Dyke Show did episode where Laura found a painting, or actually Sally found the painting and showed it to Laura, and it was a painting that Laura had posed for when she was younger called Autumn's Eve. And it was, you never saw the painting. All you heard was people gasping and other things. So you knew that it was something, but you never actually saw it. So
yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's kind of like
ways of.
It's kind of like when Steele gets his hand on Bedside Babes.
Yeah, obviously. So you never actually see. You just hear the result.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So before we get too far into this, I like this episode, but I have some issues with it as we get in specifically. And I know we just talked about how we weren't going to comment on casting or anecdotes or things like that. But I think if I'm going to have a criticism with this episode, it's going to be that I don't think this role was right for Cassandra Harris. I think she's so good as Felicia. She's so good as that sort of cunning, conniving thief that sort of is amoral, and Steele knows it. This character, Anna, is supposed to have vulnerability, or at least is supposed to portray vulnerability so that she can lure Steele in and manipulate him. And I don't feel that. I only feel the manipulation element of it as an audience member.
Yeah, and she's definitely cunning. I mean,
no doubt
about that.
All of that stuff is there. It's just, to me, it's so on the surface that it makes Steele look kind of stupid that he doesn't notice it. And I mean, we'll get further into it when we get there. But I just sort of, and I don't want to sound like I don't think that Cassandra Harris is a good actress, because I've seen her in other things, and I think she is. I just this particular role, I don't know. It just didn't work as well as Felicia.
Didn't do it for you.
So there's elements of this where I'm like, I wish we'll get there when we get there, but I just kind of wanted to open it with, like, I like this episode. I think the moments between him and Laura are really good. But some of the other stuff, and that clashes too with some of the drafts of, like, I think it would have been better for Cassandra Harris if they had used the original script, because the original script feels more like she could have pulled that off, I think, more convincingly, but that might get too in the weeds. So.
Well, the air date was March 27th. The date we have on the Memories of Steel script, June 30th.
Oh.
So it's entirely possible that she was cast for this before the changes were made. And
yeah, that's true.
So because there is a gap there of about almost 2 months. So yeah, there was plenty of time for it to change.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, so we open at the County Fine Arts Museum, where a sign is advertising the Walter Patton collection. Laura enters a museum with Steele in tow, and as they walk in, we see various people setting up lights, other equipment around this collection. This is one of the first major differences between this and the original script, because in the original script, they're not guarding the Walter Patton collection. They are guarding a series of costumes that Caroline Wells is displaying. So I don't know that it makes any sort of difference, but I just thought it was kind of interesting that they switched that. So Steele is waxing poetic about the beauty that surrounds them. And Laura says she's more concerned about Caroline Wells, saying that she's not so sure that she's confident in the security system that they have installed for the exhibit. Steele correctly assesses that her unbounding step is apprehension and not joie de vivre.
Hold it. So they're at a museum.
Yep.
And they have to install security because why? There's no security there already?
I mean, it's interesting because both of Cassandra Harris's guest appearances so far have revolved around a museum and a collection they have to protect.
Mm-hmm.
Because literally that was the plot of Thou Shalt Not Steal.
And if you look at what they're doing as they walk in and they see, the workmen installing the so-called security system, I've got this down a little bit farther in my notes, that what he's installing isn't security. It's an electric eye that you use for like a door on the front door of a business to ring a bell so that if you happen to be in the back room or away from the door area, somebody just walked in. This is not a security mechanism, folks.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't have known that, so I guess they're counting on the average viewer being me. So.
Anyway, okay.
But yeah, so he tells her not to worry. He's going to take care of everything. And as he says this, they pass a room in which a blonde woman stands there watching him as if she knows him. We get the suspenseful music play as they pass her. Still commenting on how he's always admired the Walter Patton collection. Now, that name sounded so familiar that I had to Google it because I was like, is this a real art collection? And as far as I can tell, no. But Walter Patton is also a military historical figure. At least that's what I found. I don't know where I put the link. I don't know if I still have it, but yeah. So like World War I, World War II-ish. So that to me seems complete coincidence, but it's just every time I heard that, I thought of some general or something like that rather than,
Well, there is a guy named Patton from World War II who was a general.
Maybe that's what I was thinking of. Yeah. Anyway, that's kind of where my head went with that. But Laura agrees and points out that that's the sort of admiration they're trying to protect it from. He insists that his past is past and he's totally reformed. And you can tell she's still not so sure about that.
Well, okay. He says his past is past, but it keeps coming back to haunt him in various forms.
Yeah, that's true.
And the events of this episode just being the latest example of that. So in that sense, his past isn't past.
No.
And we also know that since having been smitten by Laura, he has been changing his ways. So in the sense that we know that his past is past because of that, but it's not. So, I mean, is this just banter to just say something for the sake of something? Or is it truly him being cut to the quick because he interprets Laura's comments as doubt? After all, she does seem to be continuing to express doubts about him. I mean, even as recently as my version of things in the last episode.
Yeah.
I know you didn't say it. You didn't agree with it, but that's my interpretation.
I don't know. I sort of get the impression that anytime they're in a museum, she feels a little bit like she's just brought an alcoholic to a bar.
Okay. Fair enough.
And he's like, no, I'm good. I can come in and sit down and order a Sprite. And she's just like, okay, sure. That's sort of how I see it, because I think I know that there was some apprehension in the first episode of the season where she basically questioned how many Captain Rioses were out there looking for him.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that in situations like this, she's less concerned about old figures coming back than she is about him seeing some painting that got away and thinking, maybe I could take this on my way out, sort of thing. So, but I don't know if she's necessarily genuinely still suspecting that he would do that. I think it's more habit. Like we're in temptations in front of him, and I'm not sure how he's going to react to that. It's like her when she sees chocolate.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
But yeah, so they approach. Caroline Wells calls his name, and before Laura can stop him, he steps into the security system that has been installed via the lights. Alarms go off, and Wells congratulates him, saying she's been trying to get these men to test it all morning, and he simply steps in and does it.
Is this her being snarky? Because, I mean, Laura has already said that, Laura has said that Caroline Wells had expressed doubts about the security system. And you could... I mean, if she's got her doubts about it and she's wanted to test it because she really has her doubts about it. And especially since it's, like I said, just an electric eye, all you have to do is walk through it and it sets it off, or just step over it if you know it's there. It does seem, to me, it seems a bit, maybe perhaps snarky.
I didn't read that in the tone, but certainly the actual lines could imply that. So I was going more with the delivery because she seemed kind of, but in the original script, Caroline Wells is a little bit more doubtful of them. Whereas,
which leads into my next question. If she has so much lack of confidence in the skills of the agency, exactly. Why hire them? I mean, you don't hire. When you're hiring somebody to do something, you want to get the best person possible. You don't want to get, they're cheap. They're no good, but they're cheap.
They're not. Laura and Steele are not cheap. That's the thing.
But they're no good. So hey, let's pay a lot of money for something that's no good.
That might be why they doctored that in the final script, because she has a little bit more confidence in them in this script than she did in the original script. So that's my guess, because I didn't really get the impression that she was being sarcastic with her delivery.
Okay.
And then Laura points out Mr. Steele has a way of dispensing with the formalities. She pulls out a cigar and says that she promised her husband she would stop, but what he doesn't see won't hurt her. Laura says they can understand her apprehension, but Mr. Steele has extensive knowledge of security systems, adding rather hesitantly that he has tested systems all around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one way to put it. He's got one of the finest criminal minds of. Exactly. He knows a lot about security systems, specifically how to get around them. So he begins to explain the security system, but pauses mid-sentence as he notices the same woman who was watching him as they came in. Laura jumps in, supplying that he was about to explain the pattern of photoelectric beams. She presses him to continue, but he abruptly asks them to excuse him and walks off towards the woman. Caroline asks where he's going, and Laura, thinking on her feet, says that he always insists on a full layout of the building. And she seems happy that he is so thorough.
Yes.
So at least Laura was able to cover for his distraction here, because yeah. He wanders into a section of the gallery that's closed, and he sees the portrait of the woman, and the look on his face suggests he knows her and that the knowledge pains him. The woman, who is called Anna by the man she is with, we see them walking out of the museum. The man asks her if seeing Steele was an unexpected event, noting that she looks rather shaken. She assures him, who she calls Raymond, his name is Julian in the original script, but here it's Raymond, that she had no idea that she hadn't seen him since Monte Carlo. And I made a mix-up before, because I had mentioned this episode and mixed it up with the Bond film that she was in.
Okay.
But she is the beautiful, this confirms that she was the beautiful but treacherous Contessa from Monte Carlo, or at least that's kind of what it implies, right?
Yeah, it does kind of imply that, yes.
Yeah, so that was my mix-up.
Dreams of Steel.
Yeah. So Raymond isn't convinced, so she tells him to get the car. If he's so concerned, he does. And as he leaves, she pulls a newspaper clipping out of her purse and it is a photo of Steele, which indicates she did know he was going to be there. She crumples it and throws it away.
Okay, she's carrying a photo of Steele in her purse, but she wants Raymond to believe that she didn't know that he was even in the country, much less Los Angeles specifically. And if that's the case, how smart is it to be carrying around a photo of him in your purse?
Well, let me ask you this. Okay. How often do you go into your wife's purse?
Not regularly, but if she keeps her purse up near the front door of our house, and there are times I need to get something out of her car, or she's got something in her purse and she tells me, go get it, or I know it's there, so I go get it. So, I mean, it's not a regular thing, but it does happen.
See, that's interesting because Scott won't go near my purse, even if I ask him to. Like it's, I don't know. It's like he suspects that there's snakes in there or something, because I'll be like, I'll say like, I need my credit card. Can you grab my wallet? And he'll be like, I don't want to go in your purse. Like he's afraid of the purse. So I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that Raymond is also afraid of her purse. And she probably knows that.
Okay, whatever. Is it that Scott's afraid of the purse, or afraid of what somebody will say if they see him?
No, oh God, no. He has no problems carrying the purse. Like he'll do that for me. No questions asked. Like when we go to amusement parks and stuff, he'll be the purse holder. He just doesn't want to be he doesn't want to, I don't know. I think to him, like what's in the purse is like sacred territory. And like, it's not for him to look. Even when I tell him like, you can look, it's fine. There's nothing in there that you can't see. And he's still like, no, I can't look at the purse. So to me, that actually makes sense. Cause like he won't go into the purse.
Interesting. Okay.
So we switch scenes to a fancy restaurant. We see Laura and Steele sitting with Caroline Wells. And the man Wills and Wells, yeah. And a man she refers to as Herbert, who is Hubert in the original script. She tells him that she was disturbed when he ran off, but that Miss Holt explained how thorough he likes to be. Steele agrees with the assessment, saying that the Remington Steele Agency prides itself on its thoroughness. Laura adds somewhat suspiciously that when he sees something he likes, he doesn't hesitate to track it down. So she's definitely a little suspicious here. Mm-hmm. Caroline Wells stands up and asks Hubert to entertain them while she goes to freshen up. And Hubert conspiratorially tells him she's going to the ladies' room for a smoke, which I find hilarious. I get it that you could smoke in restaurants and whatnot back in I still remember when there was a smoking section and a non-smoking section. Mm-hmm. And I know that she's trying to hide the fact that she still does it from her husband, which is why she's going into but I'm trying to picture walking into a bathroom and someone's just like puffing away.
Hey, I can't tell you how many times, I drive rideshare. So yeah, I'm out 9-10 hours a day in the car, or, there's times I will stop and go in and maybe grab something for lunch or whatnot. And of course, there are times I have to answer nature's call. And it's surprising how many times I will go into a restroom at like a gas station. And yeah, somebody's been in there smoking. Sometimes it's not even tobacco, it's wacky tobacco.
Yeah, we get that more now because it's completely legal recreationally in all of Canada, right? Mm-hmm. So there's cannabis stores on every corner, which means that it's difficult because working in a high school prior to that legalization, what we had to worry about was students smoking cigarettes in the bathroom and vaping, which is a big thing now. But now, of course, they're also able to get their hands on, as you said, the wacky tobacco a little easier too. So it's become a full-time job monitoring the bathrooms at work, and it's actually quite difficult. I once had a student vape in my classroom right in front of me. He stuck his head in his backpack, pulled his head back out, and a puff of smoke came out of his mouth. And I could tell it wasn't cigarette smoke because you can tell the difference. But I looked at him and I said to him, "Did you just vape?" And then he looked at me and he goes, "It was an accident." I'm no. Like, what? You accidentally? So I just sort of laughed and I'm like, you got to go to the office, right? He's like, "I know." And he got up and left. It was just the weirdest experience because but yeah, so I don't know. I just find it funny that she's going to the bathroom for a cigarette. I don't know that I would want to smoke in a bathroom. I don't want to smoke at all, frankly, but like I definitely don't want to do it in a bathroom.
Well, the term bathroom may not be the correct term because it does say ladies' room. And if you watch any TV shows or movies from the past, the ladies' room was more than a bathroom. They had makeup tables and all this other stuff.
That's true. Yeah.
And so that may be, the kind of place that they're at right now may be that kind of a place that they have that as a women's room where they've got the makeup tables and the other things. I think it's not real likely, but we'll go with the terminology
sure.
as presented by Hollywood.
Okay, that's okay.
Which is always real, of course.
Yeah, obviously. Huh. So she goes, and just then some music starts to play. Now, the original script has the song listed as
The Way You Look Tonight.
The Way You Look Tonight. I don't know it well enough to know whether or not they actually used that song on the DVD, but I wondered if you did.
It did not sound anything I'm familiar to. So, yeah. No, it's not the song. It's definitely not The Way You Look Tonight from what I could hear. Which I think is interesting because what they had was an instrumental version. So copyright payments on things like the Tony Bennett from the San Francisco episode, that one you've got to pay copyright royalties on for not just the song to the composers and the music publisher, but also the record company, the artist, and all of that. So there's a couple of different copyright royalties that have to be paid. And the one that gets to be the sticking point is the artist's royalties, the recording of the album or the recording of the song. Now, they did not use a recorded version. They used an instrumental version, which I'm guessing is probably just something that was recorded by one of the studio musicians. So it's not like there was a recording there. It was one that they created. So all that would leave them to pay would be the royalties on the copyright for the song. And since the song was originally written in 1936, according to the Office of the Copyright, or Library of Congress information, if it was originally published in 1936 and the copyright was renewed, which it was renewed in 1968, I believe, 63. So given that information, the copyright on that would have expired or would expire in 2032.
Oh, wow.
The DVDs came out in around, 2005, 2006?
Yeah, something like that.
So there's a copyright on the music that shouldn't have been all that expensive. And particularly when you look at the fact that, the copyright on the music is going to be expiring in less than 30 years. I would have thought that they could have made a deal for the royalties on that. That would have been fairly inexpensive. I mean, I listened to a podcast called The Office Ladies. I've got some real issues with the podcast, but there's a lot of as we talked about earlier, behind the scenes stuff that I find interesting. So I put up with the other kind of garbage that they throw in there. But they have talked about from time to time what they had to pay for royalties for recorded music that they used. It's like $20,000 to use the recorded music. Now, I don't know if that included the DVD and video distribution rights through streaming and such, but I presume that they got all the rights because these technologies existed back then when The Office was being produced. So if they got an entire recording for $20,000, $25,000, I would have thought that MTM could have gotten the copyright payment on just the music, the published music, for a few $1,000s tops.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if they just didn't think we'd notice. Which, of course,
I think that is really
nerds always notice.
I think that is really the mentality of a lot of these studio executives. We'll change it. Nobody will notice.
Which,
again,
we do.
Treating the viewers as if they're idiots. We've talked about it before. Anyway.
So yeah, the music starts to play. It sends Steele off into his own thoughts, and as it does, we see Anna enter the restaurant and sit down at a table nearby. Raymond is with her. Hubert continues to speak, or Herbert, sorry, saying he is proud of Caroline because any museum would kill to show the patent collection. Laura asks if this is her first coup as a trustee, and he says it is, adding that she kept after patent until she got it. Steele is distracted. He's watching Anna, and we can see that he's deeply troubled. Herbert comments to Steele that it's a pretty song, and Steele sort of just haphazardly says it is. Laura notices that he's looking at Anna and asks Herbert to dance. He looks unsure and glances at Steele. She says he wouldn't mind as the music seems to absorb him so, which is obviously a very pointed comment.
Snarky.
To be fair, though, I mean, he's pretty much been absent.
Checked out.
Yeah, this whole time, and hasn't given her any discernible reason for it. And so all she knows at this point is that he kind of flaked on a client. He's staring at this woman. He's not really there when he's supposed to be there. And she has no idea what's going on. So he stands up. He goes over to Anna. He uses her name and asks if she knows him. He says she looks like someone he knows, and she tells him firmly they've never met, adding that she's sure she would remember. He apologizes for bothering her and goes away, even more confused. Raymond suspiciously comments on seeing him twice in one day, and she says that he must have come with the Welleses and points out that it isn't odd that they would frequent the same places. I gotta say that Pierce's performance in this scene here is fantastic. He approaches her with sort of the right subtlety, like it's not over the top. He's not, weeping and wailing like, "Oh my God, Anna." He's confused because she's dead. He's firmly convinced that she's dead, and obviously she looks different here. Her hair's probably different. So it's probably different enough that there's a part of him that is genuinely wondering, is this her? Is this not her? And he doesn't want to embarrass himself, so he has this like trepidation, but also this like hope in his voice, and it's just really well done. And considering the fact that for the most part we haven't gotten a ton of scenes. We get some every now and then where he's required to sort of act in a dramatic way as opposed to his usual comedic flair, which is fantastic. And I think he really sells this exceptionally well. So he goes back to the table and sees that Herbert is there, but Laura is gone. He asks where she went. Herbert tells him that she left early as she had a meeting with a client in the morning. Steele seems confused, and Herbert tells him it was with Mildred Krebs. He nods knowingly, saying that she's a very demanding woman, and excuses himself, adding that he has to be at that meeting as well.
Very demanding, but hey, I'm going to take a 2-hour lunch. Oh, I guess that is demanding. I demand a 2-hour lunch, and you don't get to argue about it.
Pretty demanding, yeah. So Wells comments on the exciting life they lead and says that he says it's more unsettling than exciting. So as he leaves, he looks at Anna one more time, and she tells Raymond she thinks that she's convinced him. He isn't sure, but she assures him that her hair is different, as is her entire look. Raymond looks at her and softly speculates that she might be using him to try to ease him out of her life. He adds that he is playing a very dangerous game for both of them, and the threat is implicit. So here's one of the issues that I have with the finished script versus the original script. Okay. Because the original script makes it very clear that Julian is blackmailing her, that there is a threat, that she is under threat. Now, yes, she is manipulating Steele to her own ends, and yes, she still is planning to have them kill each other so that she can get away from everything, and so she's still a villain, but I don't feel like, I sort of wonder how much of a threat Raymond is to her in this episode, because yes, he says you're playing a very dangerous game, but it also seems like she's playing him just as much as he's playing her. And so therefore, I don't really see her as much of a victim as she appears to, or not a victim, I guess, but as much under threat as the original script has her.
Right. We get into the so-called blackmail later in the episode.
Yeah.
Which is where, we find out that supposedly she's being blackmailed. But I agree with you. I don't think she's really being blackmailed. The impression I always had was that there wasn't really any blackmail. That was just the story she gave Steele.
Yeah.
And that she and Raymond were actually partners in on this scam to get her married to this rich guy so that they could basically legally rob him blind by selling off all his assets or something. I don't know what the long-term plan was, but yeah, it always seemed to me like they were actually partners in this. And his comment about you're playing a dangerous game was more in the line of we're partners, but if you double cross me, you won't live to regret it because you won't live to regret it.
Whereas in the script, he has a tape of her killing a man on a boat, and he basically plays it for her as a reminder of what he has on her should she choose not to go through with this plan of getting Walter Patton's money. So in the script, it's very clear that he is a threat to her, even though what she's doing is equally vicious to Steele anyway. You get the impression that there's at least a reason for it, whereas, as you said, this version of the script makes it appear that they are partners and that she's potentially considering screwing over her partner in order to get full access to, I don't know, Patton's money, whatever it is, and that she sees Steele as her way to do that. And so she's playing them both essentially like little pawns.
Well, I don't know that the final version of the script does it as well, but I think maybe what they were going for was to create the impression that she's more vicious than she comes off.
Oh, for sure.
As being, because she, the whole thing between her and Steele and her and Raymond, they're all setups. She's manipulating everybody. And in fact, the plan that she and Raymond cooked up to rip off Patton is actually part of her plan for whatever reason, she needed Raymond to help set it up or whatever. And so now she is setting up a situation where she can get rid of him, and she's going to use Steele to do it. So I think it's an attempt to make her seem colder and more manipulative than was maybe presented in the original script. I don't think they pull it off as well.
No, and I think that's my issue with, and maybe it's not necessarily Cassandra Harris in terms of like a performance issue so much as it is that I feel like Steele is smart enough to not be manipulated like he's an idiot. Like, to me, this script feels more like he is more of a puppet, and yes, we've seen that he's guided by emotion, and he would 100% want to save her and do the noble thing and everything else. But the way she interacts with him, I always watch this episode and think, can't you hear the tone of voice? Like, there's no sincerity in that. It's completely, she's totally cold. She's sociopathic. Like, I feel like you're smarter than this.
Well, he is, but the fact that he is so off balance by seeing somebody who is a doppelganger of a woman he presumably loved and that he was certain had died years ago, all of a sudden, his part of his intelligence has just been taken out of the equation, because he's responding from an emotional base, not an intellectual base. Because if he truly believed she was dead and he saw somebody who looked like her, intellectually, okay, it's not her, it can't be her, it's just got to be a double. But his response is purely emotional. So his intellect has been subverted in this. So in that respect, I think it's understandable.
I get that. I wish there had been more. I guess with her, the version of her in the original script, she seemed more desperate. And when she sets him up in the way that she sets him up, she doesn't come off as desperate, really. It comes off as very obvious that she's like, oh no, I can't tell you what's going on, but I'm in danger. Oh, please don't do anything about it though. Like it that's my terrible attempt at acting, right? But I wonder if, because the original script has her very much in danger. Julian is a threat, or Raymond or whoever is a threat to her. And so I wonder if that would have been played off a bit more authentically, and therefore Steele's reaction would have made more sense in that she would have genuinely appeared frightened. Whereas in this script, she has to literally go torment some guy at a bar and get herself punched in the face I feel like makeup would have done that same job, but we'll get
there. From what you say about the original script, you can make an argument that what she did as far as getting Steele involved and setting him up to take out Raymond is justified. Not somewhat excusable, but maybe excusable, but not justified. Depending on how you want to argue, but you could make a case that, okay, you can understand why she was doing what she did. And I think they wanted to take that away from it. I think they didn't want her to be able to say, well, I had a legitimate excuse for what I was doing. I think they wanted her to be a sociopath full bore. And it's strictly a matter of, I want to get rid of him because he's in my way, and I'm going to set somebody else to get taken care of. And there's really no excuse for it other than I just want to get rid of him.
Yeah, no, I respect that. I guess I wanted to see as an audience member, I know that she is messing with him, right? It's very clear. But I want to at least be able to somewhat buy into him responding to it with that vulnerability. I don't think she ever really shows him true vulnerability or even like can fake it very well. And I think there's the issue there is that it doesn't ever come across as being faked well. Whereas, and you're right, everything you said is right. It to me maybe just doesn't work. It's
finally I'm right about something. Yay!
We're gonna edit that part out. but I don't know. I wanted more to believe that his responses were motivated by fear for her life. And I honestly found myself going, why are you even listening to her? Like, she's clearly lying to you, you moron. And I shouldn't be doing that to my hero, to the hero of the show or one of the heroes of the show. I should be going, oh yeah, I can see how she's got you here. I can see why you believe her. And I can to an extent, but it just, to me, his performance is on point and hers is just missing something. And it could just be, again, that she's more suited to the Felicia type character than she is the Anna type character. And I wonder if, and again, this is pure speculation because I don't know how they came upon casting her for this. I know they reuse actors all the time, but I wonder if they had someone else in mind for this part. And when that person wasn't available, Pierce was like, hey, well, Cassandra's not doing anything. She can pop in for an episode, no one will notice. But
yeah.
And maybe it's also just that Felicia appears more than once. And so in my head, I see her as Felicia. And so it could just be entirely me that I'm associating her with the character she's more known for. And therefore I can't fully buy into Anna. I don't know.
Yeah, that's definitely a factor because it is a little bit jarring to see her as this totally other character and then have her come back again as the first character, It's like...
and then just like, wait a minute. Her hair's different again and she's in different clothes and you're just like, okay, all right. But so we're back at Laura's loft. She's making herself some tea. She hears her buzzer and goes to the door, opens it, and Steele is standing there looking remorseful. He asks if he can come in, and she silently motions for him to enter. He comes in and apologizes, saying that he never meant for her to leave. She asks what did he expect, and he adds that she had no desire to look at the back of his head for the rest of the night. She points out that it happened at the museum, and then again at the club, saying that watching him with that blonde is not her idea of a rollicking good time. Which is fair.
Teacher. Yep. Was that supposed to be at the restaurant? Was that supposed to be a client meeting or a double date? Because it almost seems like Laura was imagining this dinner as being something that maybe it wasn't supposed to be.
Well, I mean, their personal and professional have bled together at this point. And I think she's heard about both things. I think she's heard that he was staring at this woman that he was also staring at the museum. But I think she's also heard that he hasn't told her anything about it. And it's impacting their job because she's having to make excuses for him over and over and over with regards to this woman. So I think that, she's having an emotional reaction to it for sure. I don't think she saw it as a double date, but I definitely think it was a client meeting that they were together and supposed to be presenting United Front and he was elsewhere. And not only was he elsewhere, but he was elsewhere and there's another woman. And that's definitely, I think, gotten under her skin.
Yeah, it just her use of the phrase watching you watch that blonde was not my idea of a rollicking night out. It gives the impression that she was looking at it, or at least gives to me the impression that she was looking at it more as a personal night out than a business night out.
I think if it was a personal night out, they wouldn't be with the Welleses, right? So I definitely think that there was a...
Well, I agree with you, but it's... yeah. I'm just going based off what she said and the terminology and the wording that she used. That's not... I'm sorry, it doesn't matter. If it's a business meeting, it's not going to be a rollicking good night out. Period.
No, but I think she does have an expectation that he's going to be physically present and present in mind as well as spirit sort of thing. So and like I said, it's hard to separate the personal and the professional when you're there for a client meeting, but then the guy that you're sort of seeing is looking at someone else and she's having a reaction, which is, I think, fair because he hasn't told her anything. And he even admits her here that she has every right to be angry. And she says she doesn't want to be angry. She just wants to be let in on the joke. She says that she feels like she's the only one who doesn't know the punchline. So I think that that's also bothering her too. Like something is going on with him. She's covering for him, but she doesn't know what she's covering for. And he won't talk to her. So that's, it's not fun, right? And so he sighs. He tells her that the woman in the club looked like a woman he knew in Monte Carlo named Anna Simpson. Laura immediately realizes that this woman was important to him. She asks him if she's the same one, and he says that Anna's dead and that she died the night they were supposed to go away together. He continues by saying that she looks like Anna, she sounds like her, and then says if this were a normal case, he would blithely come up with a string of movies like Vertigo and Obsession, but it's his life, and it's come back to haunt him, and he genuinely does seem haunted. He doesn't know what's what, which is, I think, where she softens a little bit here towards him when he finally gives her that context, right? So he tells her that he wanted to tell her, but he was afraid it would sound insane. And she says maybe, but tells him that some people are not meant to leave us. He thanks her. She seems surprised, asking for what? And he says for understanding. So I do like that there's more in this episode, the finished product, that has them not really on the same page, but at least talking about how they're not on the same page. Whereas in the original script, Laura she did more behind his back, and there was more of a reaction that was off screen, like they weren't talking about it. And here he just kind of is upfront with her and he says, like, this is what's going on. And in the original script, he was genuinely contemplating going away with Anna or being with Anna after he saved her, which it doesn't feel like that's ever something that he consciously, he does tell her that he had decided not to at the end, but I don't really ever feel like he really thought that was a plan in this version of it.
No.
I think he was more concerned with just helping her, but I like this conversation. I think it's well done. So we go back to his apartment. He enters, he turns on the lights, and there she is. She's standing in his living room. At this point, why does he even have locks? Like, I gotta know. Like, it feels like you're just, I don't know, or maybe he should move. It's drastic, but
security in that building is not very good, is it?
Everybody knows how to get into his apartment. So yeah, she comments on the oddness of his name, and he asks who she is. She rhetorically says, "Don't you know?" And he's shaken. Near tears, he asks why she didn't find him, and she says she couldn't. He says, a 5-line obituary, death by drowning. She tells him she was in danger and that he would have been too. He tells her he waited all night, read the paper in the morning, and all he could see or remember was that she was married and that she was dead. She tells him it broke her heart to leave him, but she had to do it. See, this is the part, like, here. He's carrying the scene. And I don't mean that as an insult to Cassandra Harris, but I don't believe her when she says, it broke my heart to leave you. Like, I don't think she sounds even the slightest bit sincere.
I quite... See, I think that's how it's intended to be. I don't think she's supposed to come off as sincere. I think she's supposed to be obviously conning him, but he is so blinded by his emotional response that he doesn't see it. I think that's intentional. And I think that's, when you're a con, you think you know enough about cons to recognize when you're being conned. And I think that, I can't remember, there was somewhere I read or saw or heard that that's one of the things that makes con men vulnerable, is that they think they can always see when somebody's pulling a con, and that makes them overconfident that they can spot it. And that's how they get caught in cons themselves. And I'm thinking that this is supposed to be so obviously insincere that we accept that he is not thinking, that he's not seeing clearly. And as kind of an attempt to try and portray him as being so emotionally ripped up that, he's out of touch with reality, so to speak. I'll agree. It's probably not a well done presentation of that concept, but I think that's the concept.
Oh, I fully agree with you, and I don't want to keep going around in circles on it. It feels discordant and dissonant, and I don't know.
That horse isn't dead yet.
I just wish that I believed her even a little bit as an audience watching it. But
okay.
This could be why, though, he has a thing for blondes.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
So she tells him that she only came because of what happened at the club. She says that if he sees her or even comes near her again, she is still in danger. He's shocked by this and tells her that he wants to help. She says no rather urgently and tells him to stay away from her. After she leaves, we get a shot of Raymond, who is at the Rossmore and watching her. So Raymond has followed her. He knows what she's up to.
Yeah.
So the next day, he comes into the office. He's abrupt with Mildred, refusing her offer to get him coffee. She tells him that Laura is waiting for him in their office. He initially ignores her until she kind of presses him, and he enters the office where Laura is drinking coffee and looking at the paper. So we know something's up because obviously he's almost never rude to Mildred. She tells him that the mystery woman isn't a mystery at all, but rather a woman named Lydia Van Owen, who is sent to marry Walter Patton and inherit a fortune. He looks at the paper for a moment, troubled. Laura senses it and asks him what's changed. Rather than answer her, he throws the paper down and leaves the office, leaving Laura confused and hurt. So that's maybe not his best moment in terms of a reaction, but I can sort of see why he would have it, because he just saw her last night. He had it confirmed that this was indeed the woman that he loved. He's already worried that because she said she's in danger, and now Laura has just told him that she's engaged to be married. So I can see why he would storm away.
Yeah. And probably also because it's starting to look familiar to him, because this is exactly the sort of situation that Anna had just said last night kind of existed back at Monte Carlo.
Yeah, that's true. So there's a lot going on. She asks him where he's going. He curtly says out. She reminds him they have business to conduct, and he says that she can manage without him, which kind of a far cry from the way he bullied Mildred in Steal Sweet on You.
Yeah.
He leaves, and Mildred asks what that was all about. Laura says, you tell me, and then asks Mildred what it means when a man kisses you one night and turns into a total stranger the next day. This is what drives me crazy. Mildred says, you mean you and Mr. Steele? Why does Mildred always seem surprised to learn they're in a relationship? They must have had this conversation 8 million times.
Yeah, and I would imagine that she's heard some things through the door.
Right? Like one episode where she's like sticking the file underneath the door. Like this is not news to Mildred. Mildred knows this. It seems that every episode that there's a conversation between Mildred and Laura about their relationship, there's almost a reminder to the audience as, oh, Mildred learns this for the first time. It's not news. So yeah, it just, I don't know. Laura says yes, because Mildred was so furious about Millicent Fairbush, right? She got right in there. So she knows that the two of them, and claws out, honey, he's spoken for in My Fair Steel. Like, this is, Mildred's their fiercest supporter.
Yeah, and apparently also their densest.
Yeah. So yeah, Laura says yes. Mildred says there must be some explanation and says that she thinks she knows where to find it. She picks up a phone and begins her search. So she's going to the source. Meanwhile, Steele is at Walter Patton's mansion. Anna comes running out telling him that he shouldn't be there. He asks her why she didn't tell him that she was getting married, and she tells him it isn't because of someone as respectable as Walter Patton. She tells him it has to do with the man she was with in the club by the name of Raymond Marlowe. Steele connects the dots to her obituary, in which she was listed as Anna Marlowe. She insists she never loved Raymond and that she only married him to carry out an insurance scheme. She died in order to collect the policy on her life and insists that she wanted to tell him, but how could she? She was nothing but a swindler. I mean, this also doesn't make any sense. He was a con artist as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, this is a surprise. I'm dishonest. I never knew.
Right? Like that part, I don't know. It seems more of a flimsy excuse that she's coming to him in this script, whereas again in the original script, it's he's got this on me, this tape. He's blackmailing me. I need help. That felt more. At least I could see why Steele would jump into action over that. But for this, it's like, oh, I'm nothing. I didn't want you to think I was a swindler, even though we met while I was. We were both like, okay. Yeah. He changes topics, asking about her saying that she was in danger, and she tells him that Raymond has come back into her life. She says he left her in Monte Carlo without a cent. She says she was a dead woman with no past, no present, and that for all intents and purposes, she didn't exist. She tells him that one day she grew too tired of running and had to stop, becoming Lydia Van Owen. He then asks if that's how she met Walter. She tells him that he asked her to dance the way he had, and Steele ignores the memory and says, if you're going to marry him, why is Raymond still around? She bitterly replies, to congratulate me. She says that he showed up after the engagement to remind him that whether dead or alive, they were still married. She says that if he offered to share Walter with her, that he offered to share Walter with her, that seems like an arrangement. I wonder if Walter knows about this arrangement. if she shares Walter's wealth with him, adding that if she refused, he would tell Walter everything. So it seems a little weird to me that they're actually married too. That she actually married this guy.
She does excuse it as being part of an insurance swindle.
Yeah, that's true. And so Steele clarifies that Patton doesn't know, and she admits that as far as Walter knows, she and Raymond are old and dear friends, and that he is even staying in the house. She says that Raymond is happy to let Walter believe that, and she was content to go through with it until he came along.
This is where I've got a note here in my notes that refers back to what you said earlier. And my note is that Anna is a lousy actress. It seems clear that she is reciting lines and doing it badly.
Yeah.
Her lines in her story are overly dramatic, overly precise and formal, and awkwardly delivered. And again, I think this is all intentional. I will say it again. I don't think it's well done, but I think it's intentional, trying to create this atmosphere.
Yeah, you just kind of summed it up maybe better than I could have, because I was trying to find this way of saying, but yes, awkwardly delivered, and they're meant to hit him in certain places emotionally, and they do. And again, I don't have an issue with that part of it, but it's very clearly a presentation, as you just said. Like, it's a play that she's performing and that Steele is unwittingly acting in. He doesn't know he is, but he is. So she says that if Raymond sees them together, he will think that he's a threat to his plans, and he will make it his business to get rid of him. She urges him to stay away, adding that she doesn't want him to get hurt. He tells her he will take care of Raymond and that she won't have to worry about him anymore. And obviously, this is one of those things where we've seen time and time again Steele rush in to help the little guy, or rush in to help somebody that he thinks needs help, or somebody that he thinks needs protection. And you add in this extra layer of this being a woman that he loved. And I think you're right. It makes sense that he's not really questioning why it sounds like she's rehearsed this speech. Because to him, she's in danger. It's not even I'm going to help you. That's going to be what I do, because that's who he is. So that part feels true to his character. I just wish I wish that I don't know. Anyway, you said it best. So anyway, he heads to the Auburn just as Laura arrives. He asks what she's doing there, and she says that she is trying to understand what is happening between them. He sighs, and she says that she's not a child. If there's another woman in his past, she can understand that, and that she just wants him to be honest with her. She pauses and then adds that he knew Lydia and Anna were one and the same when he came into the office. He begs her to let him understand the facts of his own life, and then he will give them to her. I don't know what your take is on this, but I really like this conversation because I think both of them are coming from extremely fair and valid places here. Laura wants to be let in on the loop. Steele doesn't know how he feels. Neither wants to make the wrong move, and both are afraid to even try.
I've got a little bit of a problem with the next part.
Okay. Do you
Laura
want me
says,
to? Okay, you go ahead. Sorry.
After Steele says, let me understand the facts of my own life, and then I'll give them to you. Laura is very... Well, what she says is, if you give them to me, what we have here is a game. You dole out pieces of your past, and I'm supposed to be grateful for your trust. She gave him his name, his line of work, but his past. She always knew that he had that over her and was hoping that his present there with her would come to mean as much to him as it does to her. And to me, this sounds like, as I have it written here, teenage, angst-filled, I really like him. Do you think he's noticed me? Relationship. I
did not get that at all.
and it starts out that, and then it ends up at, well, I'm a mature adult in a trusting relationship with someone who's had a past, just as I've had one, and I recognize that their past isn't a threat. But how can I trust you when you have this past that's a threat, and you won't even tell me?
Well, to be fair, I mean,
the whole thing is just, it's very melodramatic teenage, what I imagine young adult fiction is, for the junior high or high school girl that, we want to say, we understand how you feel this way. And it's like, I'm sorry.
I got something completely different from it, because all this time she has been chasing around trying to find bits and pieces of his past. And it's not just his relationships in his past, it's everything. And I think she has a point when she says that this is a game. You reveal yourself, or you give me a piece of you, and I'm supposed to just be grateful that you have done so. But that to her is getting frustrating, because it puts him in a position of power, and she feels helpless, and she's not good with feeling helpless. She's not good with feeling like she doesn't have control over a situation. And it's not that she wants to control him so much as she wants to at least feel that they're on equal footing, that if something comes up, he's going to tell her, as opposed to hiding it and then telling her later. I think that's what's bothering her. And I didn't get like a junior high sort of feel about it. I genuinely felt that this was something that she's bothered by legitimately and fairly, because he's held back on so many other things. And eventually when he does sort of tell her about himself, it always feels like he's generously giving something to her, as opposed to two people figuring each other out as they go along. And she, I think, is fair to ask, how can I think that this means as much when I don't know what came before, what you're feeling now, what I'm up against? Are partners obligated to discuss past relationships? No, I don't think so. But in this particular circumstance, he has not. I mean, he knew that Anna and Lydia were one and the same, as she says when you came in the room. He could have said to her, "Listen, Laura, I don't know how I'm feeling. I'll be honest. I don't know what's going on in my head. I know that they're the same person. I spoke to her last night. I'm going to go over there now and talk to her." I think that would have still been fair. And she would have been valid in feeling whatever she was feeling. But instead of doing that, he just bolted on her, didn't give her any information. And then when she says to him, like, "Hey, I just want to know where I stand," I think that's a fair question, especially since she doesn't know anything about this woman. Like,
maybe it's the delivery or something. I don't know. It's just, to me, it just was, yeah, it didn't feel right.
That's fair. But yeah, I do feel that she has a right to be frustrated. And I feel that he is valid in not knowing how to feel. Because, as I said, like, a minute ago, like, I think both of them want to do and say the right thing, but they don't know what the right thing is. And so they're afraid to make I think they're so afraid to make a wrong step, they're not making any steps at all. And that's a problem, because then Laura doesn't know what he's thinking, what he's feeling, what this woman really means to him, or what he's going to do. And she still has the case that they're hired to carry out, to worry about. So she also knows that he's not paying any attention to their job, and she's having to carry that herself. So I think there's a lot going on.
Which in the past she would have been happy about.
Yeah, but there have been times where she's relinquished, like, especially when it comes to security systems, right? She does give him
that's true
the job of the security system in Thou Shalt Not Steal, and she trusted him with Royal Lovulite precautions or whatever in the last episode. So I think that this is undermining that sense of trust, because she is not usually one to give up control. And even though she hasn't fully given up control with regards to the Walter Patton thing, she's given up enough that when he bolts on her, she has to cover for him. And
although I'm thinking about the security system that he installed before that failed so miserably.
Yeah, it didn't go well, did it? No. So that is true. But she does tell him that he has to decide, not her, before walking away and leaving him obviously confused. So, I mean, she's right that they're both adults. They've both had past relationships. And normally in most circumstances, I don't think you're required to discuss past relationships. But when one shows up and was supposed to be dead and isn't dead, that becomes, I think then you have to have a talk.
You think that might be important?
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
So we're at Raymond's. We hear a knock, and Anna comes in. She tells him that Mr. Steele is there, and he asks if he came or if he was summoned. She asks why she would summon him, and Raymond counters saying that he's never sure what she's up to. She tells him that if she was planning something, she wouldn't have told him that Mr. Steele came at all. Raymond asks why she went to his apartment last night, adding that he just can't bear to let her go. She says that he forced her to go to him for the same reason he came to see her today. She says that he's blackmailing her and that he will expose her to Walter if she doesn't pay. Raymond says he will have to be dealt with. She tells him that he doesn't know what he's like and that he won't stop until he gets what he wants. She starts fussing with his tie, saying that he will have to move quickly as Walter will be home the day after tomorrow. Raymond assures her that he won't know what hit him. Raymond is as dumb as a sack of hammers.
Yeah.
So then we get Steele on a payphone to Mildred, giving her Raymond's name. He says that he was in Monte Carlo 3 years ago and to start with Interpol.
I got a problem.
Is it the same problem?
We get his last name.
Yes.
Raymond Marlowe.
Yep.
Except that's not how it's spelled. It's spelled Merlot.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, almost like the wine, Merlot.
Yes.
Was this pronunciation imposed on Brosnan by a director, or it seems like an odd pronunciation for the spelling.
It does. And I'm wondering, I mean, Marlowe being similar to the character Philip Marlowe is a name that they've used before, but yeah, you're right. It does look like Merlot, but if his name was Merlot, like that's a weird last name.
Well, I don't know if it's spelled exactly the same way as the wine is, but I would think that it, based on the spelling, has a similar pronunciation, maybe slightly different, but anyway. Yeah, that just always bugged me. Anyway. Get off my lawn.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because the last name I think is the same in both scripts, but the first name is different. Julian versus Raymond. So, but yeah, anyway. So he tells her to start with Interpol. As he says this, he sees Marlowe drive by and hangs up the phone. He gets into the Auburn and he chases him. Back at the office, Mildred is on the phone as Laura walks in. She tells him that he isn't back yet, and Laura bites her head off saying, "Did I ask for him?" She immediately apologizes to Mildred. To be fair, she immediately apologizes. Like, she realizes she screwed up. Like, that was not fair. Mildred sympathizes, saying that she must have been given a hard time. She admits to not knowing much about their private life, and Laura ruefully says, "Join the party." But Mildred does know about their private life.
Yeah.
I mean, she doesn't know everything,
maybe
obviously.
Not all the intimate details, but...
she doesn't know, and she doesn't know about Steele, even though he definitely told her. But yeah, so...
Maybe she wants Dark Prince details.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, no. That'd be a little bit too crossing that personal-professional line. But yeah. Mildred is confused, mentioning that morning to her. Laura says that was this morning. She goes on to say that one day she might decide they are strictly professional. She admits that she's attracted to him, but she works with him and adds that maybe in the future. Mildred tells her that maybe the future isn't so far away. She admits that there's something between them and that he feels it too, but it's as if they are groping towards each other, and every time their fingers touch, something happens to cause one of them to turn away. Is groping the right word for this? Because...
Well, I think...
I would say reaching.
I think maybe in 1983, the immediate interpretation and envisioning of that term is a little bit different than it is today. I don't know.
That's fair, but I mean, even just the image, I feel like reaching towards each other and every time their fingers touch makes more sense, but that's just me. Mildred admits that she's watched them do the dance that they do around each other and it makes her head spin. She suggests that one of them stands still. Laura insists she has no hold on him and that if the past can just blow in and wipe out the present, maybe she should just forget him. So this is the point where I'm like, okay, I get that she's hurt. I get that this is frustrating for her. But given what he did tell her in her apartment about thinking she was dead and that they were supposed to run away together, it feels as if she should have at least some compassion for what he's going through.
Well, the part that comes afterwards leads up to my comment about this conversation. It's, okay, they're groping, touching. One of them pulls away. She has no hold on him. And if his past can just blow in and wipe out the present, maybe she should forget him. They've gone out, they've had their fun, but they've never done anything more. So why should she care if he wants to see someone else? And why should she feel like she wants to kill him? Psychotic much? Schizophrenic much?
Well, it doesn't I wouldn't say that that's how it feels to me, but it definitely feels like she's jumped a chasm of conclusions, because
there's a shark out there. She's jumped it.
Yeah, because like she knows that he meant something, she knows that Anna meant something to him in the past. Nowhere in the interactions that they've had has he expressed a desire to go back to a relationship with Anna. That's not, they haven't even talked about that, but I don't think that that's something that, it feels weird that she says, why should I care if he wants to see someone else? Like, it feels to me that the fact that he thought this woman was dead and now she's not dead and she's marrying someone else should be raising more red flags. That she should be thinking not about, oh, this feels more junior high to me than the other conversation did. Because I would think somebody with Laura's intelligence and critical thinking skills would be able to kind of go, red flag, he's being manipulated. This should be my priority, as opposed to, well, what should I care if he wants to date her again? Like, what? I mean, is that really the biggest concern here? Like, she was dead and now she's not dead. Like, maybe that's the part where, and she can clearly see that he's emotionally torn up and confused. And I get that that's hurtful for her, because she wants, I think ideally she wants to believe that he doesn't care about her anymore. And that he just is going to say, well, yeah, she was someone I cared about before, but I don't really care that she's still alive and she means nothing to me. And he hasn't said that. But at the same time, should he? I mean, if you loved somebody and they died, that's the ultimate form of not getting closure.
Well, yeah. I don't know. It just, Yeah, Laura's whole attitude throughout this whole middle section it's just no, it just doesn't do it for me.
I do also though think that he should have some empathy for her. He's so wrapped up in everything that he's going through that he doesn't even stop to reassure her that he still cares about her. Like I feel like even that conversation that they had, if he had just said, Laura, you mean more, you mean it so much to me right now. I just don't know what I'm feeling and I need some space. Like, I feel like that would have been something, but he doesn't really give her that. He just kind of like sort of curtly says, well, why don't you let me decide the facts of my life and then I'll give them to you. Yeah, that's a little cold.
Yeah, well, maybe he's taking that attitude because he doesn't know himself if he's going to stay or leave. I don't know.
See, that's the part that I never believed. I never bought that he was genuinely considering leaving. I bought that he was confused, that he still maybe had feelings for her, and those feelings were obviously confusing because again, if a relationship ends mutually or one person ends it, you can go through a process and eventually come out on the other side where you resolve those feelings. But if somebody dies that you cared about and you thought you were going to be with forever, that person just suddenly reappearing out of the blue is going to mess some stuff up in your head. For sure. Yeah. So I can see him like internally being at war with the past and the present versions of himself because it's obvious that some character growth has taken place since he knew her. And if you think about it, we don't exactly know the time period of this, but he was obviously younger, and Cassandra Harris is older than Pierce, and not by a ton, but there is a bit of an age gap there. So you could conceivably imagine that when they had met, he was younger, he was inexperienced, he was dazzled by this older woman who was glamorous, who was part of his lifestyle, and that he was naive and fell for her. And now he's a little older, he's more worldly, but she's got that part of himself that was still very innocent, I think. So
he's experiencing old emotions that are coming up there, but they're not current emotions.
Yeah, and I think that that's confusing for him. But I also think he could communicate that better to Laura instead of just being like, well, wait till I figure it out and then I'll tell you, because that essentially puts her in this holding pattern of not knowing where she stands or what's going on or what he's thinking. And yeah, so I don't love this last part of the conversation, but Mildred does point out she's not being rational, even though she wants to be. And she says, of course she wants to be rational. And then she says, as if realizing something, she says that they are being forced apart. She let herself get sidetracked, and Mildred guesses it has something to do with Miss Van Owen. This is where Laura finally starts to connect the dots, pointing out the coincidence of her appearance, of her appearing twice in one day when she's supposed to be dead, and she vows this time not to get sidetracked. So she gets up and leaves the office. So I like that she starts to finally piece together some of these weird red flags that are like, it's kind of coincidental she showed up twice, isn't it? Like, especially since you're supposed to be protecting this collection. She's engaged to the guy. Like, maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. I'm not a detective. So we switch. Steele's in the Auburn. He's watching as Raymond leaves a pawn shop. He drives away. Steele gets out of the car, goes into the pawn shop, and begins to look around as the owner asks if he can help him. Steele says he's just browsing, and the man reminds him this is not a bookstore. He points out that the
electric. No.
Eclecticness of the establishment, adding that nothing seems to have a serial number. Interesting.
Yeah, and not very realistic, but anyway.
I mean, I'm sure some stuff gets given to pawn shops without serial numbers. Right? Well, I mean, I've never been in a pawn shop, so I will.
Probably not a legitimate pawn shop and not one that's operating as a legitimate business. And certainly none of that would be out front because I don't know how it is in other places, but I'm going to presume they have some sort of safeguards similar to what I'm familiar with. And that is certain items that are purchased, if they are serialized, they are under obligation to report those serial numbers to the police because of theft and people using pawn shops to launder the items that they've stolen and convert them into cash. So there's an obligation to report those serial numbers. And if something comes in that doesn't have a serial number, I don't think they can really, I mean, they would be taking a risk buying it if they were a legitimate pawn shop, because they probably wouldn't be able to keep it and turn around and sell it, because the cops would say, well, no serial number. Yeah, we want that because that's probably evidence of something. And if the pawn shop was a dishonest pawn shop and they were in that kind of business, I don't think they would put that stuff out front.
I mean, I freely admit I've never been in a pawn shop, but I've played one on TV. No, I've seen them. There's a few in our city that I've seen, and most of them look really scuzzy and really questionable. So I don't know.
Yeah, but
there's one or two that are a chain that I've seen different locations of, but like there's one called Pawn Stars that I'm like, yeah. So, anyway. But yeah, you're right. It would be a risk to have stolen merchandise on the floor.
Yeah. Keep it in the back where nobody can see it.
Yeah. He asks if Steele plans to buy anything. Steele asks about the man who was just in there, wanting to know what he bought. The owner looks him over and points out that he can't be a cop. Why? Because he's wearing a suit? Because he's English? Like, I don't...
Yeah.
But yeah, the owner looks him over, points out he can't be a cop. Steele says distant cousin, telling him he's a private investigator. The man says they both know he doesn't have to tell him anything. Steele slyly tells him that he should let people know about the merchandise he has, and hints that the police Gazette, sorry, for such a venue. The man looks nervous and then immediately calls for a large man named Marcus. See, I guess it's fine if you've got your stuff out on the floor, as long as you've got a Marcus to throw out the riffraff.
That's right.
You know, he tells Marcus that Steele is thinking of talking to the police, and Marcus comes at him, but not before Steele can hit him with a toaster and drop a typewriter on his foot. And again with the toaster, knocking him out cold. He grabs the man, yanks him by the neck across the counter, asking who else he has to go through to get some answers. The man, terrified, tells him that he bought a gun, taps him on the face, and walks away. So got his info. Poor Marcus. That's a bad day on the job.
Yeah. Boy, he's going to have a sore foot.
I got to wonder, does Marcus just sit around waiting for him to be summoned so that he can, like, manhandle somebody out of the... Is he...
He's probably in the guy in the back taking the serial numbers off of things.
Yeah, maybe. I was thinking more along the lines of the Patrick Swayze Roadhouse bouncer of the pawn shop, but... Anyway... Back at the museum, Laura finds her way into the Walter Patton collection, and specifically to Anna's portrait. Caroline Wells finds her, telling Laura that she is a nervous wreck. She sees the portrait that Laura is looking at and admires it. Laura asks how well she knows Lydia Van Owen, and Caroline tells her she knows her well enough to see that Walter Patton, one of the richest men in the country, is smitten to the point of being wrapped around her finger. She says he fawns over her like a schoolboy in short pants. Wow. That's a description I don't think anybody needed, frankly. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Caroline then comments on how well Laura must know her. And when Laura questions her about that, Caroline admits that it was Lydia that recommended them. Not one to tip her hand, Laura says, "Did she really?" And Caroline guesses that she must have worked with Mr. Steele rather than her. Laura, still being evasive, asks, "Did she give you that impression?" This is one of those, like, questions only games, right? Like, what makes you think that? Oh, really? Caroline admits that whenever she speaks with Lydia, she ends up filling them in about the comings and goings of Mr. Steele. Laura asks if she told them that they were going to be dining with them at the club the other night. She says she must have, and confirms that she let her know about when they would be at the museum as well, adding that she has taken an extraordinary interest in the exhibit. Then, noticing Laura's expression, she asks if she said something wrong. Laura recovers and manages to reassure her that but she is obviously putting the puzzle pieces together. So this is making more and more sense that Lydia's up to something, or Anna's up to something. At the agency, we see Mr. Steele enter the office in the dark. Is it not locked? Like, shouldn't it be locked?
They never lock anything.
Like when they do, they get broken into. So maybe that's why they don't.
and usually it magically locks itself because they leave and don't bother to lock it, but when they come back, it's magically locked. So
yeah. He goes into his office and opens the drawers that should have pencils in them, but instead he pulls out the agency gun, which appears this time to be fully loaded. Which,
well, at least in the past they kept the bullets and the gun separate.
Yeah, like I don't know. This is not a good idea, right? To keep a loaded gun just in your drawer.
Well, certainly not in an office like that. I mean, no. It might be different in your home, but yeah, not in an office like that.
This seems like a bad plan. And it seems like this season is very Mr. Steele gun heavy, which I don't love. Like, yeah, I get that it's the Bond effect. They're going for this. They're making him a little darker, a little more violent, but I don't know that I like that change personally. I think though, if he were to have a reaction where he did behave violently, it's usually when he's trying to like protect somebody, like he did with Vecmer in or not Vecmer, the guy in the restaurant in Red Hold Steel when he like shoved him up against a tree and threatened him. That at least that sort of makes sense with his character. It's when he kind of goes off the rails and tries to kill Deathcoin or something like that I'm like,
yeah,
not sure that that's really him. But the next morning, Laura comes in to see Steele is still there with file folders all over Mildred's desk. She hesitates at the door before entering. They exchange small talk, and eventually Laura asks whether the files have to do with the security for the museum. He shakes his head, saying it's a personal matter, to which Laura correctly guesses that this has to do with Anna. He says she's in trouble and that a man is threatening her. He tells Laura he promised to remove the threat. Laura asks what he wants after that. See, this is the first time that they're actually having this conversation, and I feel like it should have happened earlier. Right? What happens after? That's a good question. And Laura's treading.
The way the script has been constructed up to this point, this is the first. It makes sense in the context of the script, but you're right. It should have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She asks what happens after that. He says she's free to marry Walter Patton. Laura presses further, asking if that's what he wants, and he admits he hasn't thought that far ahead. Laura hesitates further, not wanting to be the bearer of bad news. She eventually tells him about the information she got from Caroline, and Steele immediately rationalizes it, saying that she had to make the meetings appear accidental so as not to arouse suspicion. Laura, not wanting to make things worse, simply says she hopes he is right. He's not thinking clearly, and she knows this. She's treading really carefully here.
Well, he's in that situation where if you tell him yes, that proves what he thinks.
Yeah.
But if you tell him no, that proves what he thinks. It's one of those. What is it? From the movie Little Big Man, which I never actually saw, but I've seen bits and pieces of it on YouTube, and in particular, where Custer talks to Hoffman's character, who is his Indian scout, and says, "Well, should I go down there?" And the scout says, "Yeah, go down there. They're waiting for you." And it's one of those, well, you want me to think that you don't want me to go down there, but the truth is you really don't want me to go down there. Or as it was in Kim Possible, it's a trap. Yes, I know it. But if we know it, then if we fall for it, he'll be surprised. But what if it's a trap? Nobody ever expects a trap.
The Firefly scene where, did you see us arguing? Yeah. Or no, trap. But yeah, I agree. And I also think that he's already bought the narrative that she sold him.
Mm-hmm.
And he is so convinced that he needs to protect, and probably because he couldn't protect her before. This is very likely linked to the fact that they were supposed to run away together, and he probably feels some guilt that he wasn't there to help her then, and so he needs to help her now. He's going to be the person she needed then. And so when Laura gives him this information, he can rationalize that. He can fit it into those pieces because...
Yeah, except the fact that they were supposed to run off together. And then when he read about her supposed death the next day, she was married, which obviously was not part of the plan, whatever plan that they had back then. So, I mean, at this point, he should have started to see that things aren't adding up.
Yeah, I think it's, again, where he's at is in this weird place where she says she was in danger. She told him when she first appeared in his apartment that she was in danger and she didn't want him to be in danger. So he's probably also rationalizing that, thinking, well, she married him for this insurance thing, but she wanted to run away with me. And so she would have fixed it. We would have gone away together. I should have known. I should have seen. I should have done X, Y, Z, because that's how he probably has been thinking this whole time, right? She was suddenly dead with no explanation, no rhyme or reason, and she was married, and he's probably been questioning ever since what could he have done to prevent it or to help her. So I think he's just trying to forcibly twist the facts to make them make sense, and they're not, obviously.
He's basically, he's decided this is how it is, and if you give me facts, like you said, he's going to twist and interpret the facts, twisted lies, twisted facts, to reach a predetermined conclusion, even if the logic that he's applying doesn't make sense objectively.
Yeah, there's a definite cognitive dissonance to his behavior right now, which is emotional in nature. So she starts to walk away. He grabs her arm and pleads with her to listen. He tells her he has to take things one step at a time, and the first step is to remove the leech. He leaves, and Laura says, I hope you're right. So she's kind of giving him now the space to do what he feels he needs to do. But back at Walter Patton's, Steele is in Raymond's room. He's packing a suitcase. When he sees him there, Steele tells him that he is saving him the trouble of packing. Raymond asks if he's stepping in, and Steele says he is. Steele tells him that he knows he's wanted in Europe and that if he doesn't leave Anna alone, he will have his pick of jails. He throws the suitcase at him. Raymond says he understands, and Steele asks where the gun is. When he finds it, he takes it, promising him a refund, which I kind of like, just as a car door honks outside. Steele tells him
Can I point out, this always frustrates me when people do this in TV shows. I see it all the time. Okay, you've got an automatic weapon. It uses a magazine that goes up into the grip, and the ammo is loaded from there into the chamber. But it's an automatic, which means that the chamber is not part of the magazine. So dropping the magazine out unloads the magazine from the weapon, but that doesn't mean that the weapon is unloaded. There could still be a round in the chamber. But they never clear the chamber. They never check the chamber to see if there's a round in there. So what does he do? He sticks it down in his pants, pointed at his bits again. A gun that potentially could be loaded.
And I will freely admit that whenever I hear the word magazine in association with a gun, I think about ammo magazine. And I don't actually, like, all of these technical bits don't make any sense to me because I've never touched a gun, much less know how one works. So this would go right over my head and does frequently.
Yeah. Well, and unfortunately, most TV shows are very inaccurate in their terminology. They call it a clip. It's not a clip, it's a magazine. So anyway. Get off my lawn.
I'm just saying that this is something that I would never notice because I'm
just having my get off the lawn moment.
This is very much a Canadian thing. Well, I shouldn't even say that. We have a lot of guns in this country. I don't know why I say that. There's a lot of, but it's mainly hunting culture that it's rifles. It's not, you don't see a lot of handguns and stuff. So anything I know about guns, I get from TV. So clearly I don't know stuff because I'm getting the wrong stuff. Although I do know enough not to stick one down your pants. I feel like that's just common sense. So I agree with you though. He tells him it's his taxi. He escorts him down the stairs and out the door, telling him that Rio is lovely this time of year. He then asks the butler where Anna is and is told she mentioned the museum. Does he really think this is enough? Like that he's just going to usher him out the door and he's going to go willingly?
Not if he's smart, but I would say so far in this episode, we haven't seen a lot of smart from Steele.
Yeah, that's true. So. Yeah, it just feels like this was like he went to the office and got the gun, the agency gun, and I don't want to see him use it, but at the same time, he seems to think all he has to do is call him a cab, and that'll be the end of it, which is kind of yeah. It's naive, I guess, is maybe the word I'd use. But
hey, I had a thought. If he's got the agency gun and he stuck Marlowe's gun down the front of his pants, where's the agency gun?
That's a good point. Where's he hiding that thing? I mean, you know what? Maybe we don't want to know. Let's just skate on past that. So then we've got a scene change. Laura approaches Anna and introduces herself. Anna says she is fortunate to work for Mr. Steele, and Laura dispenses with the formalities, asking why, after all these years, she came back into his life. Anna tries to write it off as happy coincidence, but Laura is not having it. She points out that she just came from the club, and she knows that Anna paid the orchestra leader to play the song that seemed to mesmerize him. Anna turns the tables on Laura and asks what she is to him. Laura admits they were in the process of finding that out when she came along. Anna tells her that if she were a better person, she would wish him good luck, but as it is, she bids her goodbye. I like this exchange. I have to say, whatever criticisms I might have about Cassandra Harris as Anna, with Steele in this episode, are completely non-existent when it comes to Cassandra Harris as Anna with Laura. I think that she and Stephanie, in every time they've interacted on screen, I've loved it.
Which I think reinforces the notion that I had that her bad performance with Steele is how the script intended it to be, and that it's not that she's miscast, it's that she's misscripted.
Yeah, and I can see that. I think the only reason I said miscast was, again, that image that I have in my head of her as Felicia melding with this other character. And that's a tough
one to get over. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, because I love her as Felicia. I just love Felicia. Like, I really wish we had seen more of Felicia. And I know that that's maybe not a popular sentiment among a lot of Steele fans, because a lot of Steele watchers don't like the characters that get in between Laura and Steele. But I don't ever think A, Felicia was going to get between them, and B, she just felt fun. Like, I like that she sometimes appears, she messes stuff up, and she
well, and even Felicia recognized that she wasn't going to come between Steele and Laura, because she said, if he should tell you his name some night over a pillow.
Yeah, satin pillow. I expect a call.
Yeah. That's not somebody who's looking to get in the middle of things. That's, hey, he's yours. There's this thing I've always wanted to know about. If he tells you, be a good girlfriend and share it with me. It's
almost like professional respect. Like, you at least can do that. And I don't know about you, but I kind of love to see that conversation. Laura calling her up and being like, okay, I got the goods. This is the name. This is, I don't know. I just love.
Fanfic writers. There you go.
There you go.
Another idea.
There's your homework.
We are so generous and creative with the fan fiction community. We are just literally giving them story ideas.
All these plot bunnies. Yeah. I would have liked to have seen that. But yeah, I do love any time they interact on screen. I think they have some really good chemistry, some tension. Laura points out that she knows that she has more on her mind than marriage to Walter Patton. And Anna says that she might have found someone else she wanted to spend her life with. This is an intentional dig. Laura counters by wondering what someone might have on her to frighten a woman who is about to marry the richest man in the world. She says she will let her know when she finds the answer, and adds that she might not want to start celebrating her victory with Steele, as she hasn't even begun to pull off the gloves. Wow. Okay. Anna leaves, and Laura follows her out, getting into the car and tailing her.
At least she's doing it in the Rabbit and not the Auburn of the limo.
Right? Yeah, the Auburn would be a little too obvious. Like, I feel like anytime they tail it. True. And I feel like anytime they tail anybody in either one of those cars, I'm like, really? Like, that is the most conspicuous vehicle on the planet, and you're going to use that to follow your... At least the Rabbit is small.
You might as well be standing up there waving a flag and having a band play,
Yeah. So we see Raymond entering a hotel room. He picks up the phone and attempts to call Anna. When he doesn't get a hold of her, he leaves a message along with his phone number and a room number, requesting she call him immediately. Meanwhile, Laura follows Anna to a rough-looking bar called the Broken Saddle. It's like the worst name ever for a bar. Like, you might as well just call it, like, heartbreak and whiskey, you know? Oh, it's just like, I'm going to start a business. I want to open up a bar. All right, what do you want to call it? The Broken Saddle. Okay. And it's at a motel too, so like that's the worst motel ever. You might as well call it like Divorced Dads.
It's a theme motel, so the bar's got to be, consistent with the theme, and then the motel's got to be consistent with the theme for the bar. And
so this to me is like one of those bars with the peanuts on the floor. This is what I picture.
Oh yeah,
right.
I'm sure they do.
Laura, she goes in, she sits down, she orders a whiskey and looks back at a man sitting at a table alone nursing a beer. They make eye contact and he looks around to see if she is looking at someone else. She isn't. He smiles back and she turns around. She picks up a cigarette and immediately he is there with a light. Laura watches as Anna and the man go into a motel room. And
okay, I got
okay.
How on earth did that cowboy even imagine? I mean, in a rational situation, how would he even imagine he could get anywhere with somebody like Anna? I mean, anyone with even a modicum of intelligence would have known that, well, first of all, she doesn't fit into that bar.
No.
The whole thing was wrong. So many different kinds are wrong. And then you think you're going to have a chance with her? And if, it's like one of those lines, any club that would have, I wouldn't want to be in any club that would have me. I mean, This is one of those things where if she is going to let you pick her up, you're in trouble. I mean, that should be obvious.
I think it's one of those things where, you know how some guys have this mentality that even if they get rejected 10 times, that means the 11th time somebody's going to say yes. This is maybe that mentality. Like, she looked at me. Well, why not? Let's have at it. So yeah, that's how. But I'm like, I can't imagine they were in there that long. So
no.
If I were that guy, I'd be more concerned that this was like an escort entrapment sort of thing. Because like 2 minutes later, they're heading to a motel room. Like, how did that conversation go? Would you like a light? Actually, I'd like you to take me to your room now. Okay. Like, what? But you're right. Like, this woman is completely out of his league in every conceivable way. And I don't mean that as she's better than him. I just mean like she's clearly
she just doesn't fit into that environment.
No, she doesn't. She's very they're too So
yeah.
Laura watches as Anna and the man go into the motel room, and inside she takes off her coat. And the man tells her that she is in for the gallop of her life.
Okay. I don't even think the most redneck of cowboys talks that way or would talk. Maybe a fake cowboy.
I hope not. That is the worst thing I've ever heard.
A fake redneck would do it, but a real redneck, no.
No.
People don't think a lot of rednecks, but even a redneck wouldn't.
Yeah, there's rednecks watching this episode going, hey, that's offensive. Not okay. Not okay.
No.
Yeah, that's that line hurts my brain. Yeah. So they kiss, and then when they part, she says, perhaps next time you'll get it right. He looks a bit confused. They kiss again. And once again, when they part, she sighs and says, what a pity, before moving away.
Yeah.
Now, this scene is all kinds of bizarre, and I'll get to that in a minute, but he grabs her, asks what her deal is, accusing her of being a tease. She tells him to take his hands off her. He lets go, and then asks if they can get down to business. Like, how are you still thinking this is happening there, pal? Like,
himbo.
Yeah, I don't understand how in his brain he's like, okay, she just asked me not to touch her.
She likes it rough.
Yeah, so she cruelly asks if he thinks that she would want someone like him to put his hands on her, even for a moment. He seems confused. She tells him that he disgusts her, and then he hits her. He moves to climb on top of her, but then she produces a gun. He backs off. She goes to the mirror to inspect the red mark forming on her face. It passes inspection, and he says, lady, I don't get you. She says, you don't have to, and leaves.
Maybe she should have said you're not going to.
This scene is frustrating because Anna is awful, but this guy is awful. And
Who are you rooting for?
Yeah, we're positioned as the audience to see her as more of a villain than him because she's more of an immediate threat to Laura and Steele, right?
Mm-hmm.
But she should not have been able to provoke abuse.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yes, she was being a tease. She was horrible. She said awful things. But a decent man would say, you know what? To hell with you, and leave the room.
Even a not so decent man would probably just say, yeah, it's not worth the trouble.
It's not worth it. Yeah. But no, she went, like, we're supposed to see him, or I think the episode positions him as somewhat of a victim here. And that kind of disturbs me a little bit because he's, and again, I asked the question, why couldn't she just get some makeup? It is super easy to make a bruise with makeup. Like, yeah, I don't know why she needed to go this far to get, or she could even just like take him into the room, hand him $50 and say, I need you to hit me. No questions asked. I'll give you this money. Punch me in the face.
Yeah,
it'd be the weirdest request he ever received, but like, yeah. I get that.
But if she paid him enough, I mean, okay, yeah, whatever.
Like, you're kink lady. Why not? Like, it just, and this also seems like a really stupid move on her part because, yeah, okay, she had the gun, which she was able to get him to back off with, but had he grabbed it from her, or had he been more dangerous than she, I guess, clocked him for being, like, she could have ended up getting.
It could have gone the wrong way, yeah.
Yeah, so it just seems like a really weird. I guess it's supposed to show us how deeply manipulative she is, but we already know that. So yeah. I don't think it was necessarily needed, and it's I don't like the fact that
it makes better TV than seeing her sit at a makeup table and apply the makeup to make
I suppose. Yeah. Laura watches Anna leave, sporting the red mark on her face. She gets out of her car, and inside, the man sits down and orders a tequila. He downs the shot, asks for another as Laura approaches. She watches him for a moment and casually comments on the singer. He tells her if she's another.
Can I comment? Yeah. In the transcript we have from the Steel and Love website, it's referenced as Hank Williams.
Oh, okay.
And I can't really tell from what I hear if it really truly is, but I'm presuming that there's something somewhere that seems to reference that. And if that's the case, then it even further reinforces my question about why couldn't they have paid for The Way You Are Tonight? Because I'm sure that getting the paying for the rights to use a Hank Williams tune would have been a lot more expensive than simply or Hank Williams recording would be a lot more expensive than paying the royalties on just an instrumental version of a song. Anyway.
Yeah, I know nothing about country music at all, aside from, Dolly Parton, Shania Twain, and Johnny Cash.
Dolly used to be country. Shania Twain never was. So let's not start that discussion. No, don't even go there. Don't even go there.
This is a whole other podcast in and of itself. But yeah, like I would not be able to tell Hank Williams from Hank Aaron. So, yeah, he tells her she's another broad on a trip to try the next station. Which I guess I kind of like that line. But Laura asks him if the blonde gave him a rough time, and he tells her to take a walk. She comments on the shiner that he gave her, and he asks what business is it of hers. Laura produces her investigator's license, and he wonders what he's gotten himself into, and asks if it's some kind of setup. Hey, buddy, it wouldn't be a setup if you didn't go around hitting women who turned you down.
Well, he is right. It was a setup, just not the one he's thinking of.
Yeah, but I mean, it was a setup that he could have easily not been set up for.
That's true. Yeah, you don't do something you shouldn't be doing and then start whining and crying about it.
Exactly. Like maybe if you had just said to hell with you, lady, and left the room, it would have still been a weird power trip, but you wouldn't be wondering if you were set up.
Yeah.
But Laura tells him that he might need a friend if she decides to press charges. The man argues that she was asking for it. and that she got what she wanted, which technically he's right, but it sounds awful when you say that out loud. Like, she does. She did want him to hit her. She was technically asking for it, but
you know, if push came to shove, that's not going to fly as a defense.
No, it really won't. Like, well, Your Honor, she pissed me off. I mean, she wanted to, but still, like, okay.
Yeah.
Laura asks if she didn't want to play, and the man insists the hotel was her idea. Laura suggested she got cold feet, and he says that she was like ice. He continues to maintain she wanted to get belted as she was saying these things to him. And I swear to God, in my notes, the next line I have written is, poor whittle baby got his feelings hurt.
He got turned down.
Like, I don't know that we're supposed to feel sympathy for this man, but I definitely don't. But no. He does give Laura the information that it was almost as if she had some kind of plan.
Mm-hmm.
Laura asks what kind of plan, and the man admits that after he hit her, she checked her face and thanked him. Laura seems surprised. She gives him some money and tells him to have one on her, adding that he won't be hearing from her again. Does she have to give him money for a drink?
She was being kind. She was paying for the information, his time, his cooperation, and
both. But yeah, so that's that. Anyway, so Steele arrives back at the Patton mansion. He rings the bell.
It was a tip. I mean, think about it. Everybody these days demands a tip. So she was just giving him a tip.
That's fair. Yeah. So Steele arrives back at the Patton mansion. He rings the bell, but the butler tells him that she isn't seeing anyone. He insists that she will see him, but the butler says that she doesn't want visitors. Steele gets the feeling that something is wrong, but the butler won't tell him anything. So he brushes past him, goes into the living room, where he sees her sitting in the dark. He turns on the lights, and she still won't look at him. Eventually, he gets her to look his way and sees the bruise on her cheek along with the crocodile tears. He is suitably horrified. He asks her what happened, and she unconvincingly tells him she fell down some stairs. Okay. He doesn't believe her and infers that it was Raymond. She feebly tries to argue it wasn't, and he asks where he is. She insists that he will kill her. She insists that he will kill her, if he knows that she saw him again. Steele asks again where he is, and she says he will kill him too. Eventually, she is forced to tell Steele that Raymond is at the club. She says that she has to meet him there with some money, which she calls her first installment. Steele runs out of the room while she yells at him not to go. Yeah.
Well, you know, the first thing she says about falling down the stairs, I mean, it was an obvious lie.
Yeah.
And she said it as an obvious lie, knowing that it would be recognized as a lie. But then she gets smart. When Steele asks her, did Raymond do this? She tells the truth, but she tells it in such a way that it sounds like a lie. So later she can say, well, no, I told him Raymond didn't.
Yeah, I didn't.
Raymond didn't. He just misinterpreted.
Yep. He gets in the Auburn Laura and drives away just as Laura arrives. She yells for him to wait, but he doesn't hear. She turns the car around and follows him. Meanwhile, back at the house, she calls Raymond saying that she's supposed to be meeting Steele at the club with $10,000 as a first installment. Raymond says that he is on his way and hangs up. Anna gets her coat and heads out the door. So she set up the pieces, and now she's just gonna wait and see.
Watch the show.
Yeah. Steele arrives at the club, picks the lock. He enters. It's empty, and he looks around.
Wait a second. I had a problem with this too. I mean, does one of them own the club? Because, well, first of all, why didn't either Steele or Raymond wonder why the meeting was there after hours when the thing was locked? I mean, would they have accepted it without question if she said, well, he's going to be down at Tim Hortons and they're closed and just pick the lock and go on in because he's, oh, no, wait, what do
I
we
love
have
that
to do?
You put Tim Hortons in there. I appreciate that.
I did that for you. Yeah. But I mean, why, what is this club that neither one of them thinks it's weird that they're having this meeting there?
Actually, I'm looking in the original script right now because there was an explanation for it in the original script. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something along the lines of one of them owning it or having partial ownership of it or something like that.
That's the only thing that makes sense, but they don't bring that out.
No, it's taken out in this script.
So it kind of leaves it as kind of this.
It's an odd place
weird
to
thing.
set it up if the place isn't open.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's empty. He looks around. There's no Raymond. Eventually, he hears the door open and he finds cover. Raymond comes in, looks around. Steele follows, aiming the gun at him. Eventually, Raymond is out in the open and Steele has the shot, but he pulls back, telling him that she isn't coming. Raymond shoots at him, and Steele dives out of the way, losing the gun in the process. He ends up hiding behind a drum set, while Raymond hides behind some chairs. Steele looks at the gun on the floor, but he can't get to it. Eventually, the door opens again, and Laura walks in. Steele yells for her to get back, just as Raymond fires at her. I mean, why shoot her? Just because she's there? Seems odd to just start. I guess maybe
don't leave any witnesses.
Yeah, that's true.
Is the theory.
He crawls out from the drums and grabs the gun, shooting twice at Raymond. He gets the chairs, but not him. Raymond fires back. He asks if Laura is all right, and she tells him that they've both been set up by Anna, and this is exactly what she wanted. Steele tells her to stay down and stay quiet. Laura continues saying that she wanted Steele to kill Raymond, and she tells him that she knows that Anna claimed Raymond hit her. Raymond denies it, and Laura confirms it, telling Steele the story about the guy in the bar. Raymond says it's persuasively put, but it doesn't change anything, as he's invested too much to let them walk away from this. So
yeah,
that's, he obviously has a point. Like, he can't, even if it's true, he can't lead witnesses, as he said. So he starts to sneak out from behind the chairs as Anna arrives and sits outside the club. Steele pushes the drum out and distracts him long enough to rush Raymond and fight for control. The gun goes off. He wrestles him to Raymond to the ground. It goes off again, and he knocks it from his hand. Raymond throws Steele back against Laura and makes a run for it, only for another gunshot to ring out. He staggers back into view, shot, and falls down. Steele motions for Laura to hide as Anna comes into the room and says in a somewhat shocked voice, "You're alive." Steele has finally figured it out. Like, he's finally put the pieces together, and he's not loving the result.
No.
Like, you really have to look. No, and you really have to feel for him here, because you can see the hurt in his eyes, like the fact that he doesn't shoot Raymond, but it looked as if he was about to, right? He pulls back, and that's when he makes the decision just to say that she's not coming, as opposed to just open fire on him. But had he done that, she would have made him into a murderer. And
that was her plan, to make one of them into the murderer so she could kill them and then justify it as self-defense. Yep. Which
is devastating for him, because it basically shatters this image that he had of who she is, and not just now, but then when he knew her, right? She was never that person that he thought he was in love with. So, ouch. He says, "You just had to see who came through that door, didn't you?" She says she was afraid that he had killed him. Steele adds that she can claim self-defense. After he shot him, he came after her. She says it doesn't matter, and that he's out of both of their lives. And Steele says that he will always be with them, as she murdered him, and unhappily for them both, he can prove it. So, yeah, he's not letting her get away with this. She says, "You wouldn't send me away. Not that we found each other again, and now it no longer works," right?
Yeah.
Whatever hold she had on him is gone. And when she realizes this, he says nothing. She lifts her gun, points it at him, regretfully saying they could have had so much together. Yeah. Laura runs at her and grabs the gun as it goes off again. As she takes him away, Anna says goodbye, Remington Steele. Are neither of them scared she's going to tell people the truth about him?
Yeah, that's a point. That's a point.
She's not above blackmail. We've seen that.
No, that's true. That's true.
That's anyway, that kind of struck me as a bit strange. But it's funny, because the amount of people that do pop up from his past never seem to do that. They never seem
to. Hey, wait! This is a blackmail opportunity. I can make my
exactly. Like, that doesn't ever seem to be a thing that they decide to do. So I guess that's where we're at. So we got a scene change. Laura is in her loft. Is it ballet that she's practicing? Like, she's in a dance outfit.
Well, she's doing exercises for either dancing or my thing was, is she practicing for their next foray into the circus life?
Yeah, maybe. But
yeah, that's a kind of dance thing that you commonly see in TV shows and movies that feature somebody who's, practicing for the ballet or something like that. So
Yeah, and it looks like a ballet bar that she's sort of bending over and stretching on. So that's kind of why I wondered that. And it makes sense.
As opposed to the cowboy bar from earlier?
Yeah, the broken saddle. So yeah, the buzzer goes. She opens the door. It's Mr. Steele. He's brought a bottle of wine as a thank you gift from Caroline. He says he had the urge to share it immediately. He says he wants to explain things to her, and she says there's no need. He insists it might help put things into perspective.
What was Caroline sending him a bottle of wine or champagne as a thank you for? What did he do?
I guess
Caroline had to be thankful for.
I guess we're supposed to assume that time has passed and their security system worked. I don't know that part. You're right. It's a good question. Or maybe again, in the original script, there was more connection between Caroline and Lydia and Anna. And I think when you remove that from this, it does raise a couple of eyebrows. So
anyway.
Yeah. He could have just come over and said, I bought a bottle of wine. Let's drink it.
And it'd be a thank you gift from him to her. That would have been,
That's a good point. That would have made sense. Like I want to apologize. I brought this as a consolation.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing me back from the brink.
Yeah, basically. Because she grabs the wine, goes over the counter. As she gets the glasses, he tells her that he went to the house for two reasons. One was to tell her that he sent Raymond away, and the other was to say that he didn't feel they had a future together. He says that she would always be part of his past, but that was where the relationship belonged. Laura asks what made him realize that, and he points at her and says that it was her, insisting that he's not the same man who walked into her life and that he has changed. He says that she has changed him, which this all makes sense. He is a very different person, even from season one, right? Like we can see growth, which is not something you often see in shows like this. So yeah, Laura smiles and insists that she only changed his name. He says that's the most obvious alteration. She opens the wine, pours it into two flutes, asking what they should drink to. He suggests the present and the future, and she jokingly says, isn't that getting a little brazen for us? He's about to answer, and here's my question. Anna's song comes on. How? There was no music playing before.
The record player is magic.
Is her loft haunted? Like, is this the ghost? Like,
yes.
What's going on here? How does it... I could see it being something like if you had Alexa, your home smart system, whatever, is suddenly... But yeah, it'd have to be a stereo or a record player.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just had this vision go through my head. You said Alexa, and I thought about how Alexa and Siri, they don't listen to you very well. I commonly I'll be dictating stuff, while I'm driving, so I'm not using the phone. I'm using hands off for texting, and it'll get it wrong. And then from there, I went to, there's a scene in the movie Wild Hogs that is just... Oh,
I love that. I love that movie. It's a good one.
It's just so he tells he's got his computer automated to respond like Siri or Alexa, and he tells it to, I don't remember exactly what he says, but it mishears him and winds up opening all these horrible things.
Yeah. Actually, that makes me think of, like, you've heard my husband's accent, right?
Yes.
Accents and speech recognition technology do not go well together. And like, I don't know if you've ever seen it. There's a really funny sketch where these two Scottish men get in an elevator that is voice activated, and they tell it to take them to the 11th floor. And of course, the elevator doesn't understand. And as they get more and more agitated, they end up screaming at the elevator, like, all right, you cow, I'm going to go to America and find whatever desperate actress gave you a voice, and then I'm going to go to the electric chair for you. Like, they're just so mad. And like, one ends up on the other guy's back yelling, freedom, Scotland. And then the doors open and there are people staring at them, and they're like, going up. But it's actually not that far off, because we went over to friends of ours, their house, and they had an Alexa. We don't have anything like that in our apartment, but like,
do you realize that by our saying this, we have triggered that device multiple times for people that
that's funny. Yeah, that has. Sorry. Unless they're listening in their car, I guess. But yeah, like, we went over to the friend's house, and my one friend is Scottish and her husband is Canadian, and Alexa
does this sound familiar?
Alexa doesn't recognize her. The system will only listen to him because it can't understand
She's her. Canadian?
No, but she's Scottish. He's Canadian.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So anytime she speaks, the thing doesn't do anything. He has to say it all. So yeah, anyway, it was just like, this is obviously not, they don't have voice recognition technology, so I would love to know how the song came on. Yeah. It would have made more sense if she had music softly playing in the background when he came in. There's no music.
On a changer, and so that it drops the next, Yeah. Anyway,
so Steele turns it off and says, let's be brazen. They lock arms and drink, and then he kisses her as the scene freezes.
My comment is that as they drink, arms intertwined, isn't that typically part of a wedding reception?
It is, but they do it a couple times on the show. And it struck me as sort of odd every time, because you're right. It is like a typical thing you see at weddings, or and it looks awkward. Like, I've never tried it myself, but it looks like it'd be really, like, I'd break something. I'd drop the glass, or,
or spill on yourself as you're trying to get it to your mouth. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. Most of it would end up on me rather than in me. So, so anyway, do we have any other thoughts on the episode?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything.
I hope it didn't sound like I didn't like this episode, because I actually really do. I think Pierce gives a fantastic performance, and I really like some of the conversations that he and Laura have. I guess I'm thinking it's maybe the Felicia effect that causes me to not be able to buy into Anna as much, but I don't know. I actually do quite like this episode.
I don't hate it. I just don't love it.
That's fair.
Take it or leave it. It's one of those episodes that, when you're watching through a series, that if it comes on, you'll watch it, but you won't go out of your way to watch it.
That's fair. Yeah.
So
I can see that. So, yeah. So on the website, www.steelewatching.com, we've got show notes, links to Amazon US and Amazon Canada, merch, ways to support us, all kinds of fun stuff. We also have social media resources and links, such as
links to follow the podcast in your favorite podcatcher, the official Steel Watching Facebook page, the official Twitter, the official Instagram, and the link to the Steel Watchers fan group on Facebook, as well as ways that you can support the show financially by subscribing, as we have recently just had another person do. So yes, we thank everybody doing that. So
and it's super cool too when I've taken, now when people join the group, I sometimes ask, like, where did you find us? Because I'm curious as to, I guess maybe it's an ego thing too, but like, I'd like to know if we help grow the group a little bit. And a few people have said that they found us through this podcast. So that's super cool that people are joining us because they heard us talk about it, and that now we have a bigger community. So
yes.
And the next episode is going to be yours, and it will be Hounded Steel.
Yeah, a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. We can listen to it. We can talk about JD Cannon, and after we can all go out for Wookiees.
I don't think we want to go out for Wookiees.
I just had to say it. Anyway, I think that's about it.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Hey, everybody. Eric and Sarah here. Just a quick announcement to let you know that, yes, we do appreciate everyone who listens, participates, and supports the podcast in whatever way you do. But we wanted to give an extra thank you to those who are so graciously giving to be monthly financial supporters.
We are making live streams of our recording sessions available to anyone who is a monthly financial supporter. So not only can you watch us live as we record our podcast episodes, you will be getting access to the raw, behind-the-scenes, unedited version of episodes before they get officially released.
And Sarah, does that include our mistakes and screw-ups and our humiliating? Yes,
every single one of them.
Every single one of them, yes. So again, this is just an extra thank you to those who are going above and beyond. But whether you choose to become a monthly financial supporter or not, we still love you. We want to say we thank you for your support, your encouragement, and your feedback.
If you want to become a monthly financial supporter, please visit our website at www.steelwatching.com to sign up.